Hello and welcome to the table, Baldurs Gate, DND, and yes, Warhammer friends from both the fantasy and Total War Warhammer communities. Have a seat, grab your favorite drink, and settle in for a unique modded character build and class. The Witch class and subclass, Covenant of the Night Hag. Specifically, we'll be basing this build off of one of the most berserk melee shock units from Total War Warhammer, the Witch Elves of Nagaroth. This episode will be going through all 12 levels of the Covenant of the Night Hag subclass of the Witch class. We'll also be going through a modded subrace of elves known as Witch Elves, which are very closely similar to the actual Witch Elf units from Warhammer. Huge credits to the mod author, Porridge77, for taking the time and effort to create this class and different unique subclasses, because as I know many of you in the Baldurs Gate and D&D communities really want to get into role-playing as a witch and having different sets of mechanics and features from the other caster classes. And yes, technically this mod author has stated themselves that this is a homebrew class. It's not technically an official D&D class. However, I would advocate that this class does seamlessly fit well into both the worlds of Baldur's Gate and D&D 5th edition, because let's face it, witches do technically exist in both universes. Now, for those who are new to the channel, one of my main focuses for videos is creating unique Baldur's Gate 3 characters, utilizing mods both for enhancement and roleplay, specifically giving you more different types of replayability. Now, if that's something you're really into, I would love to hear your personal favorite character builds in the comments below, and let's get an in-depth discussion going on what characters you would specifically build this class around, what you would multi-class and also synergize this class with, or completely different character build requests. Now, side note, I do have side projects of more narrative-driven Total War Warhammer campaigns, both of modded and non-modded factions, to show and tell unique stories of each of the individual leaders. And if you love talking shop about character builds, specifically for D&D or Baldur's Gate, or epic story-driven war campaigns, consider hitting the like, subscribe, and bell icon notifications for more of those unique adventures. Also, for the new viewers who may have stumbled upon this video, the way we will structure the character build is going through the starting level with specific choices in race and other beginning features, levels 2 through 12, and then wrapping up with specific gear and equipment to complement the build in terms of roleplay or improving stats and spells. Now, when it comes to character builds, I do mainly stick with choices in abilities, spells, and equipment that suit the characters thematically, roleplay wise, or keeping in line with what the mod author intended for this class. However, I do sometimes slip into choosing metagame choices or also choices in equipment and spells that min-max with damage output. Whichever camp you fall into as a D&D and Baldur's Gate player, whether it's just choosing a class and character for roleplay purposes, or also for number crunching damage output, just as long as you yourself are having fun with it, that's all that matters in the end. Now, the reason I'm going through all 12 levels only as the class is to showcase everything that there is to offer, and also this is my way of saying thank you to the mod author. And yes, of course, I'll be leaving a link to the mod in the pinned comment below at the very top of the section of comments, and also a list of other race and spell mods used to pair with the modded class too. We'll be saving separate videos for multi-classing modded classes together or with base game classes to really create different types of synergies. Now, before we get into the specific details of the character build, we should have a quick lore overview of the Witch Elves from Total War Warhammer, for those interested in the backstory and also to keep to the theme of their playstyle, keeping as close as possible to Warhammer fantasy lore. And yes, Warhammer fantasy lore aficionados, please let me know in the comments if I missed any specific and important details, especially if those details should affect the level up choices and also spell choices for our character build. Now, according to the Warhammer wiki, Witch Elves are known as Brides of Cain. They are female dark elf warrior cultists who serve Cain, the elven god of murder and war. The Witch Elves are the cruelest of all Dark Elves, for they are the female cultists who live only to serve Cain's malevolent demands for bloody, agonizing sacrifice. Their observances to the Lord of Murder are blood-slicked affairs. Still beating hearts are ripped from the victim's chests and hurled into fires. Writhing flesh is daubed with gore-red runes, and altars are decorated with the entrails of dying captives. Yet ceremonies are but a part of the Witch Elves' worship. Their truest observances take place on the field of battle. So yes, this is a very edgy and dark type of elf with a massive bloodlust. Not totally chaotic, but more so on the verge of neutral evil in terms of alignment. But without further ado, let's get into the first level of this build. At starting level, we'll be using a modded race called the Witch Elf, which uses a unique cantrip and different sub-race features, the cantrip being Malevolent Lash, 1 to 10 psychic damage, slash a creature with a dark projection of a purple whip. The corruption consumes them for a split second, causing an enemy to mess up their attack for a total of 1 turn. Creature has a moment of weakness against corruption with disadvantage on the next attack roll. We also have Revel in Agony. Sadistic rituals taught you how to empower yourself through the means of agonizing pain. When you are under any harmful condition, your attacks or spells deal an additional 1 to 4 psychic damage, and you gain advantage to charisma and wisdom saving throws. So this is kind of rewarding you for being under harmful conditions and also having negative effects about you too. So it's almost like saying that you should be embracing the amount of damage or any harmful effects coming your way in order to dish out just a tad bit more psychic damage to your enemies. As for psychic damage, Mistress Protection, with your utmost loyalty, the Mistress of Darkness grants you resistance to psychic damage, taking half as much damage from psychic attacks, which also, funnily enough, does go hand in hand with Thought Shield. Your patron doesn't appreciate attempts to attack your mind. When you take psychic damage, your attacker takes the same damage. This is specifically for the subclass, which we will be showcasing today, of Covenant of the Night Hag. We'll also be getting the cantrip Vicious Mockery, insulting a creature with causing disadvantage on their next attack roll. It is a little bit redundant with our Malevolent Lash, but it's there for flavor purposes. As for some of our unique actions as a hag, we have essentially what is a wild shape form, turning into the form of a night hag. This also is kind of like a unique shape for us, where we kind of turn into what's basically anti-Ethel. As for spell and cantrip choices, yes, I know technically Witch Elves in Total War Warhammer don't use spells on the battlefield, but we're going to be choosing ones that are in line with their nature of just causing havoc and being an overall pain and thorn in the side of your enemies. We're going to choose Gust, which it's what it sounds like. It's essentially like a very small or light force push, pushing creatures up to 1.5 meters away, or an object up to 5 pounds 3 meters away from you. This is kind of keeping the distance for them. Even though our Malevolent Lash only has a distance of 9 meters, this is essentially making it so that they are gonna have a hard time to close the distance on us, and we can still whip them from afar. We'll also be using Mold Earth, manipulating Earth at our whim and causing the surfaces to become difficult terrain and making it difficult and hard for enemies to close the distance on us. Grease is also going to complement that well. Cover the ground in grease, slowing creatures within, possibly making them fall prone for 10 turns. This is a good area of effect control spell, and essentially this is almost like a get out of jail free card, and making it so that we as a caster can escape our enemies should they try to close the distance on us. Hex is also pretty useful too, even though it's a meager 1 to 6 necrotic damage. It does give disadvantage on an ability of our choosing too. For the background choice, I decided to go with Criminal, giving us useful skills of deception and stealth, and also this plays into the fact of some Witch Elves being criminals themselves or being shunned from Dark Elf society. As for the ability point allocation, I would personally put most of my points into Charisma and Constitution. Constitution mainly to provide us that health bonus and also some survivability on the battlefield. Charisma because of the fact that our spell casting modifier relies on that, and also for damage output, Wisdom and Intelligence, leave at base 10, take a lot of points all out of Strength, and then dump the rest into Dexterity to provide us with a higher initiative and also higher armor class 2. With our skill proficiencies, we'll be getting Sleight of Hand at a strong +4, Stealth at a very strong +4 too, Arcana at a respectable +2, Medicine at a respectable +2 as well, and last but not least, Deception at a very strong +5 at starting level. At second level, we gain spells specific to the class and also to the subclass. The subclass itself, we gain Dissonant Whispers, dealing 3 to 18 psychic damage and granting enemies disadvantage on ability checks, attack rolls, and frightening them, keeping them in place for us to dish out more damage. For the class itself, we have the Find Familiar spell. Basically what it sounds like, provides us with an ally in battle, and also you can pick whichever spells you want here, but I'm gonna go the offensive route with Arms of Hadar, dealing necrotic damage to enemies and also making it so that they can't react, plus also Ray of Sickness, dealing 2 to 16 poison damage and also potentially poisoning targets, dealing damage over time for 2 turns. At third level, the spell choices I would pick for role-playing purposes would be Hold Person, keeping enemies still, and they can't move, react, and attacks within 3 meters are always critical hits. This is in line with a Witch Elf and also Sister of Slaughter from Nagaron, because of the fact that this would definitely be something that they would use on the battlefield to keep their opponents in place and dishing out and going berserk on them. Also, speaking about going berserk, Crown of Madness is another good roleplay spell here too. Instill madness in a humanoid enemy, making them attack a creature closest to them other than you, even if it's allied for 10 turns. Basically, just like the Sisters of Slaughter and also Witch Elves, causing and sowing as much chaos and discontent on the battlefield as possible. At fourth level, the spell choices I would pick here is Pass Without a Trace, providing silence and giving +10 bonus to stealth checks, giving us primarily the advantage of potentially sneaking up on our opponents, and also with some of our weapon choices and also gear choices, stacking up on that stealth check and then dishing out additional damage. Ray of Enfeeblement is also really useful should you find yourself in melee combat. This essentially weakens a foe, making it so that they deal half damage with weapon attacks using strength, and this is our anti-barbarian, anti-fighter spell. For the ability, for the feat, I would personally choose ability improvement, putting points into Constitution, giving us an overall +3, and Charisma, giving us a very strong +4. At level 5, we gain features and actions of Ranger's Companion, gaining a Beast Companion that helps us out in combat and fights alongside us, and also Crustacean Horde Call, which is pretty wild here. Failings of Armored Crabs to fight alongside you, more summon spells and battlefield control, and also to help our friends out in battle too. Bestow Curse is going to be one of my personal spell choices, cursing creatures with our touch. The curse either bestows disadvantage on checks and saving throws or attacks, and lets us deal additional damage to the target or robs it of its actions. Slowing them down is also a good spell here too. Target up to 6 creatures and slow them. Movement and actions are affected, and AC and Dex saves are reduced by 2, making it harder for them to close the distance on you and also your allies as well. At level 6, we gain spells specific to our subclass like Fear. Targets drop everything and become fearful, having disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls for 2 turns, and Spirit Guardians, 3 to 24 necrotic damage, call forth spirits in the area to protect you, and also targets will still take half damage on a save. Hunger of Hadar is a good spell here too, mainly because not just for the cold and acid damage, but also the blinded condition, making it so that enemies essentially have little to no control. And speaking of control, Stinking Cloud is also a good spell to pick up here too, preventing creatures from taking actions for a whopping 10 turns too. As you can see here, a lot of the spell choices are all about battlefield control, which is kind of the Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughter memo too. They're not just used for berserking and wreaking havoc, but also making it so that enemies have little to no control over their actions as well. At level 7, the spell choices I would personally pick here would be Grasping Vine and also Blight. Grasping Vine for more battlefield control, summoning a giant vine of dragging enemies towards itself and keeping it away from you and your allies. Blight is a very good anti-plant or anti-woodland being spell. Plants take max damage from the spell and have disadvantage on a saving throw against it, and it has a very high damage potential overall, even to non-plant forms too, of 8 to 64 necrotic damage. At level 8, we gain a subclass specific spell of Phantasmal Killer, 4 to 40 psychic damage onto creature with its own worst nightmares, taking that psychic damage, can't move, disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls for a whopping 10 turns. And also, spells that I would pick at this level would be Conjure Minor Elemental, summoning essentially a demon to fight alongside you, and you could justify it as having well, Dark Elves in Total War Warhammer are known to summon demons on the battlefield alongside them. Malekith has done that in the Warhammer fantasy novels. And also, Banishment, temporarily banish your target to another plane of existence, just buying you a little bit of extra time to deal with other enemies too. This could be a good anti-boss spell too, essentially making it so that that boss enemy is out of combat for 2 turns for you and the party to deal with other threats on the battlefield or less threatening enemies. Also, the feat I would choose here is actually a modded feat that's called Meta Magic Adept. You basically take a little dip of your toes into the sorcery pool and gaining meta magic choices of different passives. I personally like choosing Subtle Spell, Cast Spells while Silence, and also Twin Spell. Spells that only target one creature can now target an additional creature, adding for a bit of battlefield control. Now, for whatever reason, at level 9 there wasn't any features available, but at level 10 we gain a spell, Dispel Evil and Good, meaning aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead have disadvantage on attack rolls against us for 10 turns. That is a pretty big list of enemies there. You can also break enchantments that charm, frighten, or possess allies. Also, a very useful status effect spell right there. For the feat, this is a very oddly specific choice. I personally like picking up Spell Sniper, learning a cantrip and reducing the number we need to roll a critical hit with spells by 1, and specifically I am using another mod that adds different types of elemental blasts for evocation cantrips. Also, for whatever reason, there wasn't any features listed at level 11, but at level 12 we gain ability improvement and also a spell feature here, Planar Ally, beseech one of the otherworldly entities for aid, allowing us to, yes, summon another ally, and this time potentially a devil in battle to help us. And yes, this is starting to kind of become more of a summoner build, but at the same time, we still have the capabilities and also can hold our own in battle and not really rely too much on our summons either. We'll also be picking up ability improvement for our feat and rounding out our charisma to a very strong 20, really just leaning into being a full-fledged caster. Alright everyone, when it comes to my gear and equipment selection choices, it's a little bit of a mismatch of things that surprisingly work well together, and also, even though we're not leaning into too much of a caster role and using a dagger instead of a staff, it is in line with what a Witch Elf and Sister of Slaughter would definitely use in battle, and also the shield, we can kind of justify it as having it mainly for the ability conjuration spell here, Wode's ensnaring strike, summoning thorny vines, and ensnaring our target, keeping them in place. Definitely something that a Witch Elf of Nagaroth would use, as well as Rhapsody, Scarlet Remittance, gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls, damage, and spell save DC for every foe you slay, up to a max of +3, Sweet Bloodletting, possibly inflict bleeding when hitting a creature with this weapon while hiding or invisible. Very much in line, and also complementing our Pass Without a Trace spell. For the rest of our equipment, leaning into spellcasting itself, Hood of the Weave, Arcane Enchantment, gain a +2 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls, Cloak of the Weave, +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. Really just trying to up the chances of us landing strikes with our whip or other spell cantrips and attacks. Absorb elements, absorb elemental damage once per short rest, take half damage from the next elemental attack targeting you, and deal additional 1d6 of that element type on your next attack, almost like a reflect damage spell. And also with Cloak of the Weave or Robe of the Weave, Arcane Enchantment, +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. Whenever the wearer succeeds a saving throw against the spell, regain 1 to 6 hit points, adding to a little bit of sustainability. Daredevil Gloves, Doomlobber, wearer gains a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls. Ranged spell attacks are made as melee spell attacks when you are adjacent to a hostile creature. Briskwind Boots, after scoring a critical hit or killing a hostile creature, movement speed is restored to maximum, adding to a little bit of mobility to us, and making it so that we can dive in and out of combat too. Spellcrux Amulet, it is just what it says, spell slot restoration, basically allows us to keep casting and blasting. Burnished Ring, Paralyzing Ray, making it so that enemies can't move, and allowing us to dish more damage with Rhapsody or with slinging spells. And also the last choice here for the ring, Ring of Arcane Synergy. When you deal damage with a cantrip, gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns, and also making it so that it's really rewarding our spellcasting ability modifier, which is our maxed out Charisma. Alright everyone, that has been my character showcase of the Witch Elf Night Hag build. Let me know in the comments if you would make different choices in terms of spell equipment or just overall leveling of the character in terms of roleplay or min-maxing damage output. Also, let me know what kinds of different character builds you would like to see on this channel too. I have several more in mind with both different subclass showcases of the Witch, but also completely different modded classes as well. And for the returning and new viewers, if you've watched this long into the video, thank you so much for your time and also for taking the effort to really see what this class has to showcase. Until then, I'll see you all on the next adventure, friends.